Enigmas of Time and Symbolic Mythology. Since human beings became conscious of themselves, one thing has been clear. Reality exceeds any direct attempt at explanation. There are forces, movements, and processes that escape objective language. Faced with this excess, mythology is born, not as a lie, nor as naive fantasy, but as a symbolic language created to touch what cannot be captured literally. This is how the enigmas of time emerge within symbolic mythology. Human imagination does not create myths out of whim. It responds to a limit. When reason cannot reach, the image emerges. When concepts fail, symbols appear. Mythology is the effort of consciousness to dialogue with the invisible, the impersonal, with that which operates before any defined form. Gods, monsters, and narratives are not historical characters, but symbolic translations of deep experiences of the psyche and of reality itself. Within the enigmas of time, mythology does not describe facts. It describes processes. Each god represents a function. Each narrative points to an internal or cosmic dynamic. The modern mistake was to treat these images as literal accounts, forgetting that they were born as maps, not territories. When a symbol is taken literally, it loses its power and becomes mere fantasy or rigid belief. Symbolic mythology arises precisely to recover this lost meaning. It does not ask whether gods existed as physical beings, but what they express as structuring forces of human experience. Chaos, for example, is not disorganized confusion, but the primordial field from which all forms emerge. HYPNOS is not a sleeping character, but the suspension of conscious vigilance. Morpheus is not a winged being, but the principle that gives form to the formless within the realm of dreams. These are the true enigmas of time. Human beings have always struggled to sustain emptiness. The indeterminate frightens, silence unsettles. For this reason, imagination fills the void. It gives name, face, and intention to what has none. This operation is necessary, yet dangerous. Necessary for understanding. Dangerous when we forget that we are dealing with symbols. Mythology is born as a bridge between the unknown and the comprehensible, but it becomes a prison when it is confused with literal reality. Reality does not present itself as image, but as process. It flows, transforms, and reorganizes itself continuously. Symbolic mythology attempts to follow this movement, translating it into narratives that the human mind can endure. When these narratives are frozen, when gods cease to be functions and become fixed characters, myth loses its original purpose, and the enigmas of time turn into caricatures. Ancient myths spoke in poetic language because they were dealing with dimensions of experience that escape linear logic. They did not seek to explain the world as modern science does, but to express the human relationship with mystery. Each myth is an attempt to organize internal and external chaos without destroying it. Symbolic mythology recognizes this and restores myth to its original depth. Depth psychology confirms this path by showing that the unconscious communicates through images. Dreams, visions, and myths obey the same symbolic logic. To interpret them literally is to lose their meaning. The symbol does not point to itself, but to something that transcends it. When this is understood, the enigmas of time cease to be enigmas in the sense of problems to be solved and become portals of understanding. There comes an inevitable moment when the image must fall. When a symbol fulfills its function, it dissolves. What remains is not a new image, but a direct experience of flow, presence, and silence. Few are willing to cross this threshold without quickly creating another myth to lean on. Yet it is precisely there that symbolic mythology reveals its highest value. There is a fundamental difference between using myths and believing in them literally. To use myths is to recognize their function as a language of the ineffable. To believe literally is to confuse the bridge with the destination. Symbolic mythology proposes a return to symbolic maturity, where imagination is recognized as a tool, not as final truth. The enigmas of time and of mythology ask neither for worship nor rejection. They ask for deep reading. They ask for symbolic awareness. They ask for the courage to sustain mystery without immediately turning it into a fixed image. When this happens, mythology ceases to be entertainment or belief and becomes once again what it has always been, a living language between the human mind and the real.